On December 23, 1967, 22-year-old Police Sergeant Herbert Schirmer was driving on Highway 63 around Ashland, Nebraska, when he spotted a red light up ahead. Schirmer believed it was a stopped vehicle and approached it, turning on his high beams. As Schirmer drove closer, though, he would soon come to realize that this was no truck or car, and something he had never seen before. In this episode, we will examine the alien abduction of Police Sergeant Herbert Schirmer. Around 2:30 a.m. on December 23, 1967, Police Sergeant Herbert Schirmer was driving on Highway 63 in Nebraska. Up ahead, Sergeant Schirmer spotted red lights and began slowing down to see if the vehicle needed assistance. As Schirmer drove closer, though, he turned on his high beams and was astonished to see the red lights were not coming from a vehicle. Rather, they were coming from some type of strange craft hovering in the sky. Schirmer remained in his police car and watched in disbelief. The UFO was about 6 to 8 feet above the highway. It was shiny, silver-colored, and disc-shaped with some sort of walkway that circled the craft. The red light he saw was blinking and illuminating through several of the windows on the craft. The UFO would then slowly begin to rise up, making a loud sound similar to a siren. It suddenly shot off quickly into the sky, shooting a flame from under the craft as it flew away. A bewildered Sergeant Schirmer got out of his police car and then began investigating the area the craft was hovering over. He then returned to the police station and noted the strange incident, writing, "Saw a flying saucer at the junction of Highway 6 and 63, believe it or not." The incident was confusing for Sergeant Schirmer, to say the least. He seemed to have time he couldn't recall from that night. We will dive into the missing time aspect a bit more in the video. Schirmer also reported he had a bad headache just hours after the event as well. There was a strange buzzing sound in his ear, as if he had been at a rock concert for hours. Even more strange, Schirmer had several strange marks on his body. One was a red mark on his neck below one of his ears. It was about 2 inches long and half an inch wide. As morning arrived, Police Chief Bill Wasklin drove over to the site of Schirmer's encounter. He would find a small metallic artifact, and later chemical analysis showed it was composed of iron and silicon. Investigators from the Condon UFO Research Project stated it was most likely ordinary corroded earthly waste. The Condon Committee was a U.S. Air Force-funded UFO research project led by Edward Condon. Schirmer still believed, though, that something had happened to him and decided to undergo hypnosis to uncover his repressed memories. Schirmer worked with psychologist Leo Sprinkle of Wyoming, and the following was revealed around the events of the night. On the night he saw the UFO, Herb Schirmer recalled under hypnosis how several humanoid beings took him from his car and abducted him onto the craft. The beings had gray-white skin, large heads with big cat-like eyes that didn't blink. They had slits for mouths with flat noses. The entities had silver suits with helmets having a small antenna coming from the left ear. They communicated with Schirmer through telepathy. Interestingly, the being's suit had a logo of a winged serpent, something we have seen reported in other alien abductee cases. For example, the Filiberto Cardenas case we covered on this channel had a report of a winged serpent emblem. The beings appeared to be quite similar to the prototypical Greys, but still had some differences, most notably having cat-like eyes instead of big round eyes. Schirmer would be taken to the leader of the beings and be shown around the craft. One thing he would report under hypnosis were the details around how the craft operated. He said the beings used some sort of propulsion unit that relied on the principle of reversible electromagnetism. Schirmer would also recall the upper level of the UFO. It had a large screen that looked like a TV in the middle and was displaying a galaxy. The beings told him that, "This is where we are from. a galaxy next to yours. To the left of the TV was a map with a sun and planets. Also, there was writing in a strange language Shirmer had never seen. In the room, there appeared to be a number of computers, although their purpose was not fully explained. Several sketches of the event were done not only by artists, but Shirmer himself. Under hypnosis, Shirmer was able to sketch the upper level and control room, the leader, and the propulsion system. One of the more fascinating things that seemed to happen during this case was that Herb Schirmer appeared to be overtaken by something during one of the hypnosis sessions. During the session, according to UFO author Brad Steiger, Schirmer began to speak with Steiger and the hypnotherapist as if he was one of the entities. Whatever was speaking said they would be returning from time to time to keep tabs on Schirmer. Also, they said they planned on showing Schirmer the universe. Schirmer would say that he was experiencing mental communication with the beings. Still, Steiger stated they had no way of really verifying the entities or communicating with them, and it could simply be some sort of delusion. In addition, it's possible the being somehow programmed him to react this way. Or it's possible somehow they put in an implant that allowed them to monitor and control Schirmer, especially if he was to be hypnotized. Is this case just one man's delusion, or is there some credibility to it? The case of Herbert Schirmer is certainly an interesting one. It has many of the characteristics we've seen in other alien abductee cases and UFO sightings. Still though, much of the case relies upon hypnotic regression, which somewhat underscores the credibility of the alleged encounter. The fact that the being spoke through Schirmer will lead many to believe a demonic element is at play. This certainly could be possible, as we see the supernatural often creep into alleged alien abductions and alien abductees. In addition, we found the timeline of the events to be somewhat a bit concerning. In the UFO report, it said the UFO sighting happened around 2:30 a.m. in the morning and lasted between 5 to 10 minutes. Herb would then investigate outside the car for some time. The amount of time isn't specified, but probably was at least a few minutes. Then he drove back to the police station, and according to the UFO report, he recalled missing time around 3 a.m. In sum, this seems like a very small amount of time missing at play. According to the timeline of events, he would have gotten in his car around 2:45 a.m., and the police station was probably at least 10 to 15 minutes away. Once again, that doesn't really leave much missing time. Most often, missing time in these cases is quite obvious with hours gone. Still, this doesn't mean this event didn't happen to Schirmer. It could be that Schirmer saw the 3 a.m. time when he got back in his car after walking where the craft had been. Or maybe the missing time was misdocumented some other way. In addition, there were strange marks on his neck, and the hypnosis sessions can't be completely ignored. One other thing too is the serpent emblem, which is a detail that is tough to imagine one would know. It's not known whether Schirmer had further contact with the beings. If this case is true though, and the beings did speak through him, that definitely raises all sorts of questions around using hypnosis for these types of events.